Good morning, Dr. Sandra and Dr. Larry.
Hey, good morning.
Good
Big
morning.
and pig and dragons getting together to get together
Yeah.
That's right.
and
Getting it together.
getting it together. Ah,
I know. Hey, that's good. That's really good, right? You just gotta drop everything for a minute because you don't really know what's next. If there's something to do even, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that pause can be so great.
Yeah, exactly. I
we
like the
If you do it
sound.
for 10 minutes, people might feel a little odd.
really, it's like people
Might
are
be
like,
like,
thank you, have a
"Oh,
nice
wait
day.
Philip Glass does psychotherapy.
Well, the interesting thing about Qigong and mental health practices is that I always think of it as like an action that we're taking to get better, an action that we're taking to be healthier, an action that we're taking to be mentally healthier, mental or balanced. So these are all like outgoing activities, right? I'm talking to Dr. Larry, I'm talking to Dr. Sandra, I'm taking small steps, I'm loving more, so how do we actively do less and make that be a practice and a part of our health and wellness when there's so much around us that's calling us to act or fight and change and build and grow. And
Transform.
what is it that tells us to pause, sit back, gather in, and build for the future? So that, how do we know that that's what really works?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
So,
going to spotlight you guys, so I have to do less.
Oh, okay.
so
Well, you could.
you could, or you could,
Go
yeah.
ahead, Sandra. Go ahead.
So I'm thinking that one of the things that that came up as we were getting ready was this whole idea of how doing nothing is doing something, and that when we just take that moment to pause, we allow ourselves to digest. And digestion is both the process of breaking down things, but also assimilating all the nutrients from that thing you experienced, right?
Right.
So that's how we get more energy to do the next thing. We actually have to allow ourselves to be in the digestion process so that we can actually have energy to do the next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's sleep also, like big part of our day ought to be sleeping or resting or all this accumulating you're talking about. I think that's really important. We were, yes, I was thinking about like what happens actually in a lot of sessions I have, at least for me, because the person often comes in agitated. I mean, there's something going on, and they're distressed by something, and that becomes the initial point of contact. And sometimes that's really what we really need to be paying attention to. After all, that's what's their main problem that day. But the angle they're taking to address it, right, is got a lot of this sort of agitation and mind, a lot of mind. And I'm often just sitting and waiting. Internally, I'm hearing it, I'm present, but I'm like waiting. Like what? I mean, that's too passive. I'm not waiting. I'm receiving it, and sort of where's the moment? Where is the charge? Where is the center of this that I can then act from? And I've learned to trust that. So I could sit and not respond much of all at all. I mean, I'm responding, but I'm not saying anything or suggesting anything, for quite a while. And I know that's disturbing to the client sometimes. What are you doing? I know I'm listening. I want to know what's the central, most important thing, which I think is the kind of digestion that you're talking about.
I agree. And when someone's feeling disrupted,
yeah,
in order to slow that down, it's almost like in neuro-linguistic programming, they call it pacing and leading.
Yeah.
You sort of go with them, and then you sort of go with them a little, and then you sort of just start to make yourself a little slower, a little bit slower, and then you wait a little longer until they start to feel like, wait a minute, I can actually process this thing. So I find myself sometimes when they first start is that I get into it, I engage, and I say, oh, really? And I try to mirror their emotions.
Yeah.
And then I start to notice, like, what am I feeling? What feels like the thing that they need to get from this? And as I start to feel that, I can just slow down and allow myself to look for moments that allow me to get them to that place, right? So I first have to just kind of take it in what they're dealing with. And then I go like, oh, okay. Feels like this is the thing, like you said, this central thing. And then I just give myself some time to see where in their discussion we can start moving toward what feels central in my mind, and see if that's what feels central in their mind.
Right.
So I'm popping back in because you guys are showing me a picture of me as a non-therapist, what I can be doing in everyday situations in my life that we, where I'm engaging with somebody and I may be feeling all kinds of feelings, and what I can do in that moment is just sit and listen and say, oh yes, and I hear you, and not have to be thinking about my response and preparing my answer and getting ready to take an action. Again, what happens when I'm sitting back? What's happening to me in terms of my emotions, and what's happening to me in terms of my digestion when I'm kind of picking up the behavior that you guys are describing in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
There's a question there, like, what is really happening to you when you're sitting in that moment? What is happening to you? What will happen for me when I'm sitting there kind of just soaking it in?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. I think that's really a helpful thing for people to keep in mind. Sandra mentioned neuro-linguistic programming. Some people might not know what that is, but what's important about it was it's like a methodology that was developed by studying really accomplished therapists and extracting from them what they do. So it's a little bit external, but the internal part that people have are really accomplished comes from some kind of inner preparation. And in our world, that inner preparation comes from Qigong, and from understanding that, when you do your practice, there's activity, but inside it's quiet. If you're aiming for quiet, so that somehow the usual means you have of doing something is not what guides the practice. That sort of thing you're talking about, you're strategizing, you're thinking about what to do next. How can I have an impact here? Who should I talk to? What's the angle? All of that mind strategizing stuff, kind of learn to put aside and trust there's something else inside going on that we could talk about in terms of like energy and internal processing and what's going on in the organs and the way your body is centering itself. But out of that comes, I think, from what comes towards what Buddhists call right action. Mm-hmm. Like being able to respond at the moment with what the moment's calling for, which your mind can't really, it's too big for the mind. So you have to use some other means of orienting. That's how I think of it.
And as you were talking, Larry, one of the things that came to my mind was growing up in a Baptist tradition. Uh-huh. And there was this guidance from elders, and that was called Peace Be Still. Peace Be Still. And it was a song. Uh-huh. So when you're in the midst of feeling really disrupted, you would even just say to yourself, peace be still, like to call in your peace and to call in your stillness, because it's in from that place that you'll actually be able to do what it is that needs to happen in this moment. It's like a friend of mine used to ask this question, what does the situation need? Uh-huh. And so in order to really know that and to start to take the first step toward that, there's a sort of a peace that you have to get to inside so that you're comfortable and you have what you need to take the right action, right? Yeah. So that was in my mind as well, that place of peace is also a place of power. And I think that speaks to that inner power that you were getting to, that's underneath all the movements and the strategies, but there's an inner power that we want to access.
And that's beautiful. Wow, that's so powerful. Yeah, we have learned, each of us from Grandmaster Lu. He says so many times, the answer lies within. So if that's true, then we have to have a way of getting there, to finding the within that holds the answer. And, many times we're disrupted by situations, by our emotions, by how we believe, what we believe is the trouble and problems. And so, yeah, peace, be still, or whatever means you have of regularly creating a pathway into that place. I know that in my work, I try to help people discover how to do that. I'm pretty darn sure you do the same.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
I'll come see you anytime.
yes, it's like, yes, absolutely. And and I do it with myself.
Yeah.
Because, it's like life offers you, let's say it this way. I'm not spiritual bypassing, but life offers you opportunities, right? And circumstances. And so we can see them as like, oh my gods, or we can see them as, oh my God, right? We can see them as like, oh my God, like here's like this opportunity for me to discover like really more of me. And as hard as it might be feeling in that first moment, something can start to awaken when you start to feel a little bit more comfort navigating through things. So I always want people to know when they feel in those moments where it's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that hard thing to come, that there's something inside of them that can always guide them back to that place of peace and taking right action, doing what needs to be done that feels right to them, following their intuition. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really beautiful. And then when you do that, you don't have regrets.
No regrets.
Yeah, honestly, right? Because then you just knew you did the best you could do, the right thing as far as you know.
Yeah.
And then you're on to the next moment. You don't really have to look back wondering, was my strategy correct? Because there was no strategy.
Yeah.
Really powerful, I think. Yeah, beautiful.
Great, guys.
So,
All right. So many good reasons to be still and to remember that we have everything we need. Just waiting for us to ask.
Yeah.
Ask it to show up for us, and sometimes that may be showing up to sit quietly. So I hope you all get a chance to do that before summer's over, and
sure.
sending much love, and we'll see you all again next week.
See you
Thank
next
you.
week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.